Hello again, this is Deadpool Negative. I'm here to talk about this title that came out last year and I quite enjoyed. More the first trade of a title. Like I kind of fell off it after the first arc, but I got the trade and reread the first arc. And there's another comics channel I kind of watch through Gritted Teeth. And the guy running that channel complained, "Well, there's no comics with any vitality." And I do agree with him on that. I agree with him. I disagree. That it's been a bigger problem than it has been for a while. Also, I think this guy is at this point kind of pessimistic with the sheer thrill of it, which is a good racket. But I want to talk about a title that's being currently published that I feel is vital, that is actually exciting to me. I mean, not perfect, but one thing, there's a little too much therapy speak in it, but it is called Local Man. Oh, this is created by a guy I've been a fan for over 2 decades, Tim Seeley, mostly known for his work on. He's the creator of Hack Slash, which is a terrific riff on horror films in the post Buffy landscape. And also the other creator is Tony Fleecs, who worked on one of the really great comics the last few years, Stray Dogs, which is a series. It's a short series, and it can be a hard read at times. But Stray Dogs is a series about a bunch of dogs that are owned by a serial killer, and it's told entirely from the dog's point of view. And since they're dog, they don't really quite understand what's happening, what their owner's doing, and their owner just feeds them, treats them okay, and really well done series. But this is touches on themes that Seeley's been working on for most of his career. Like when he broke away from doing G.I. Joe, with Devil's Due and stuff like Voltron or G.I. Joe versus Transformers. Like I like to joke that Tim Seeley, with what's going on with the current universe, Tim Seeley killed Bumblebee. Tim Seeley finally brought Cobalt on the comics. Does he get any credit? No. Um, but a couple years ago, the series wrapped. It's quite a good series. I kind of wish they'd publish it in because I have it in 8 trades, and that's kind of tiring. In compendium form, because about ran about 47 issues, which is a series called Revival, which I think would have gotten more attention if it was a zombie series, but it's a zombie series where there's no zombies. People just come back, and they're not exactly dead or alive. They're just kind of, well, it explained in the series, but it was a well done series. I think it would have gotten more attention if there hadn't been also, coincidentally, around the time it was released, a lot of similar. There were TV series about, like, well, they're zombies, but they're not really zombies. They're just alive again. And why have they come back? And a Revival was a very good, what the ads would call a rural noir. It kind of went off on tangents that didn't work, but Local Man and Revival have a very good a common theme. It's about people living in a small town in Wisconsin who aren't exactly happy there. And in Revival, it was more like just the situation. It wasn't the town itself. The main character of Local Man, a guy named Jack Xaver, who, when the series starts, has been basically fired from his position as a superhero named Crossjack, is a guy who definitely wanted to get out of, uh, Farmington, Wisconsin. I don't think there's a Farmington, Wisconsin. I know there's a Farmington, Missouri, but there is no Farming. As far as I know, there's no Farmington, Wisconsin. And both Revival and Local Man hit on themes of like small town life, how it can be stifling, but how there's also value in it. And what's interesting is like again, the main character is a guy named Jack Xaver, also known as Crossjack. He is a superhero. His power is he can take anything and turn it into a weapon. Of course, the joke is like he's really crap at shooting a bow, but he can use he primarily uses a shield. Although we find out amusingly in the first issue that because of what happened on his superhero team, his superhero team third gen, he is legally unable to use a shield. But he's great at throwing things or turning any object into a weapon. It's a strange talent. There's more to it than that, but there's a lot of threads that are set up in the initial arc. What happens is Jack Xaver, he's been best way to put it, he's been Me Too'd. To explain what was going on and how basically everyone sees him as a villain, as a bad person now. And he is. He's not, but he's not terrible. He's just not great. He didn't do what you would think he would, people who normally get Me Too'd are accused of doing. He did something, someone around him made a decision that would, from their point of view, was the right one, but it got out and he was blamed for it. And he deserved it, and then he didn't deserve, and he also did deserve it. That's my interpretation. So what happened was he's back at his hometown. His parents aren't exactly happy to see him. He runs into his old high school girlfriend, and they connect well. One of the interesting things about this show, the comic, is a lot of it is Seeley and Fleecs exploring their anxieties and shame, as also joy at the interpretation of old early '90s image. Both Fleecs and Seeley are huge '90s image fans. You can tell. I mean, and I remember I was actually at a Chicago convention in 2001, which is the first time I met Seeley. I met him like 2 or 3 times at the convention, maybe 3 times, I believe, three times. And he had this ash can that I picked up from him, which was all these cool, like, it was a project called Meta, which I never went to fruition. But I believe an early version of Love Bunny and Mr. Hell was in there. Well, no, not Love Bunny and Mr. Hell. Character from Love Bunny and Mr. Hell was in there called Liberty Lizard. And if you know what Love Bunny and Mr. Hell is about, but Liberty Lizard is a funny character. But I read that. I just remembered, like, there was this whole, like, I forget the name of the collaborator, but it was just all, like, there was a project. It never came out, but it was like all these weird imaginative, like, it was just like Seeley and Fleecs are these. In fact, at the end of the book, there's back matter. The Seeley and Fleecs are the kind of guys that really loved the characters they created a kid, and they wanted to bring it into the. But they also have the perspective that this is stuff of its time. And one of the odd things about the book that is not entirely successful is it seems to be taking place in 2023. And the flashbacks we see are at least one of the flashbacks we see takes place in 1992, because Dan Quayle is seen, and that is a 31-year gap. And the characters of Jack Xaver and his high school girlfriend Inga look to be in their mid to late 30s, and when they should be at least in their 40s or 50s. Maybe that's just the way. Tony Fleecs draws the majority of the modern day sequences. Seeley pitches in here and there. I believe it's a very collaborative effort art. Like they get created. They created and written and drawn. Like Seeley does the flashback sequences that come at the end of every issue, but Fleecs draws it. It's a very different looking than the Stray Dogs, which I believe is also drawn by Trish Forstner. It has a real Jeremy Hahn style interpretation to it. That I kind of liked, just that sort of like weird, like almost ethereal take on. I'm gonna put this, like it just feels like these are just people that exist in a real world, even though there's fantastic things going around. And I think it's kind of crucial what the comic is trying to illustrate. So basically, he meets his ex-girlfriend. They kind of hit it off, but she's married. And the old supervillain who used to hang out there in the same town, he's a little addled from years of being beat up. And then he's murdered. And Jack, with nothing else to do in this town except stew in his own juices, takes upon himself, even though he's not allowed legally to be a superhero anymore. Again, that's one of the best jokes in the series, when he's basically reamed out by his former super team to be the hero, be the local man, so to speak. And so this progresses in a way that goes in ways you don't expect. You do expect and you don't expect. I mean, we find out more about Crossjack's history with the super team 3rd Gen, and its mysterious leader, Camo Crusader, and his wife Neon, and how Jack, again, don't want to give too much away, but it's also about Jack. He's a sympathetic protagonist, but he's not exactly a good person. In fact, he realizes that at the end of the story. Like I said, there's a lot of therapy speak in this game, in this comic. Um, one of my another great Seeley comic is the Squad King Shark series, which is a fun series, but it also has a lot of characters sitting there explaining their motivations. There's a scene in an encounter group, several scenes in an encounter group actually, but Jack Xaver is a lot less sympathetic than Defacer was. He's sympathetic, but he's also, again, you'll see. But it just, a lot of it is funny. Like there's a joke in the story in one of the issues where a priest does a favor for does a favor for Jack, and he's like, I should do something for this guy, and he says, so he decides to tell the priest because there was a crossover where the third gen went to heaven and fought God. The God and the devil are real. He doesn't have to worry, and it's just, but the way he does it is such an awkward, like, again, what I think Seeley is good, maybe too good, at depicting a lot of characters who are self-absorbed in ways that self-absorption can kind of affect people in ways that you just don't expect. And there's a lot of really great characterization. Camo Crusader is interesting in that he is kind of almost a caricature, a villain, but there's also a part of him. But at the end of the story, someone points out about him. He did well. Camo Crusader isn't exactly a villain, but he's not exactly a hero either. He's something. But there is a real villain because once again, like, it turns out there, like the supervillain whose death Jack is investigating. That's not the only supervillain who meets their end in this storyline. What's but again, like, this character, he tries, and Inga's a likable person. Inga's a human, you know. Inga, unlike Jack, stayed in town. Inga made a life for herself, and she's doing better than Jack. I mean, but their back and forth is probably one of the best parts of the series, and which makes there's a really brilliant bit of foreshadowing that's meant as a character beat that I thought was like super clever, but you have to like reread it to understand what it is. But what's interesting at the end of the story, you understand Jack. You want him to do better, but you're worried that he can't. You're worried that, like, what he's doing is just another way to be the hero that he thinks he needs to be, that is necessary to be. And that, I think, is a fascinating way to interpret. Like, when we were kids, we loved all these cool superheroes with stylistic looks, and but what was that? Where was that leading to? Again, like, the Image era was really just style over substance more than ever, and that had a lot of good and bad things. And like, what Seeley captures is the excitement of it, but also the stupidity and uncertainty of it. Like, I remember the Image era, I was not happy with it. You know, I would say, like, I prefer Tim Seeley and Tony Fleecs to Rob Liefeld or Jim Lee these days in terms of art, and that's just not just me sucking up to them. That's just how I feel about it. And there's a sense that, like, the people, even being a superhero, the way it's been commodified and commercialized in this world, it swallows you up. It swallows Jack up. It swallows his teammates up. There's a really disturbing story at the end where you meet what seems to be other superheroes that Jack knew, and he can't remember what happened to them. And you think, and by the end of the story in the back, you start wondering, like, well, what did happen to them? And they don't there's an answer, but it's not a particularly pleasant one. The series is also pretty humorous. Like, there's a recurring gag about the only Uber driver in Farmington who's always insulting Jack, which I thought was pretty amusing. Um, there's also a lot of good, just solid. Like again, like it's a sad series. It is, but there's also just like humor. Like Seeley isn't stomping on superheroes because he's ashamed of them. He's just kind of reckoning with the ridiculousness of them. Seeley and Fleece, I should say. You know, that there's good and bad out of it. There's good about being a superhero, but like when it becomes too self-serving, well, what happens to you? Like it seems like there's a lot to think about. You know, and I think the series is really off to a very good start, much like Revival was. I don't know if it's going to run as long as Revival. I don't think it might. Like again, Revival's very good. I should also forgot to mention Revival is drawn by the great Mike Norton, who I don't think he's been doing any books lately, but he really should. Like I wish Battle Pug had sold well enough to continue because that's a wonderful book. But yeah, like I'm gonna start reading the regular issues soon. The second trade should be out in April, but I mean, I really connected with this book. I really felt like Jack, while while kind of ridiculous, kind of a disaster of a person. There was a lot to just the way Fleets and Seeley wrote him, and I also thought, like, and just the way they kind of mess with superhero tropes, have it clash with the real world. I mean, you've seen that stuff before, but like it seems to really be building towards just an arc that about can you be a better person if you're essentially a shallow one. And I think that's worth exploring, and I hope to see it explored a little bit more coming soon. Anyway, hit the bell for notifications, like and subscribe, and I will see you later.